And hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Westworld. Jumping into episode 6 tonight, Fidelity. Really excited to jump in to this review of Westworld. Okay, good. Sorry, I'm watching the audio kind of switch back here. Hey everyone, sorry, that was all professional, and then I just mucked it up right there at the end. But thanks so much for joining us. Very excited to have two awesome people to talk with this show about. Of course, he was with us last week. He is back again tonight from Enchantment of Eternity. It's Mark.
Hey, how's it going? Great to be here talking about episode of Westworld. It's going to be a great discussion. It's good to be back here, and this time I have my spaces invaded, or I'm sharing it.
From Alysa Jean's reviews, Mark's sister, Alysa Jean.
Hi, yeah, and I'm just still tripped out by being in this because I've seen Mark through the screen in this space so many times, but now here I am going through the computer screen on the other side.
Well, if we're gonna do a little mind belting, tonight seems to be the right night to do it. And with this episode, there was definitely some just fun, torturous little bits, but hey, what? You can't go wrong with more than Aaron Paul's. So that's always a good thing. I want to say hi to Fangirling and Loving It, joining us live in the chat, along with Richard Bloom. Thank you both for joining us. Thanks to everyone joining us in the archives. And of course, you can always catch us, at least for the next 2 Tuesdays, right here at 7 p.m. for the final 2 episodes this season of Westworld. And yes, we will have a season 5. They don't have to rope up the entire show in the next 2 episodes. If you were concerned about that, I was a little bit, so I had to clarify it. So let's dive into things then tonight. Alysa, let's start with you. How have you been seeing this season of Westworld compared to the previous seasons? How do you think that they've been carrying the story along? And then bring us into what you thought of tonight's episode, Fidelity.
I have been absolutely loving this season, particularly after that episode 4, the twist. I am not sure there's a lot of shows out there anymore that can execute twists as well as Westworld has done. And I did guess part of it. I guessed. I think to me it was pretty obvious that was the adult Frankie, and then I went the next logical step. Well, the weapon is Maeve. But I was thinking like they wouldn't catch up until the end of the seasons. I had no idea about the whole Caleb thing. Like blew my mind, and I just thought it was so well executed. And then last week, finally getting more about the Christina thing. Finally getting that. I feel like the season has been very well paced. They're distributing the story at a very satisfactory rate for me, and I'm really enjoying it. And as far as how's the comparison to the other seasons, I'll have to wait until see when it's done. But I do feel like it's kind of combining the best elements of some of all the previous seasons. Like season 3, which I loved more than me and Mark both loved more than the average person did. But it did depart a lot from what had been established, especially in the first season and the second season as well, or just the feel of the show, not what has been established. But which is probably why a lot of people didn't like it as much, because it was kind of out there in left field. But I feel like season 4 is bringing that all back together now, or they're just bringing all the seasons together and combining all elements of the season. And I love that they didn't bore us with another humans versus robots war that we've seen a million times. We just yada past that. And the after result. And even though it is very similar to the Matrix, I think I don't mind that because it's a unique story, even if it is very, very much like the Matrix. It's with Westworld characters. It's got its own flavor, its own, and it's got Tessa freaking Thompson in it, like kicking ass. So
yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
So, So I love that they did it that way. I love that they yada yada and past the boring robot versus humans war that we've seen a gazillion times. And so, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Now, as for this episode, I wasn't as excited about it as the previous two, but I think it was still a pretty thrilling episode. It was very, I definitely enjoyed this episode. Got some more Bernard stuff this week. He was lacking last week. So yeah, we'll get more into it as we get into the episode. But I did enjoy it.
Lovely. Mark, what about yourself? What did you think of coming, especially off of where we built and left to last week, and then kind of where they decided to go with this and how they decided to pull this little part of the tale out?
I kind of like how they're focusing on different characters, like every episode. Sometimes we like last week we didn't get any Caleb, and this week we didn't get any Christina, which I like that because it's able to like shift focus and focus on different things. And yeah, so I think this is a good sort of link in the chain, a good linchpin, a good setup. It builds the characters, it deepens the mysteries, answers some things, but it's not like what I would call like a important landmark episode like episode 4 was. But these linchpin episodes are also very vital and very important in good storytelling. And I got to echo what Alyssa said about the pacing this season being really good and really perfect. And I think this applies to this episode as well. So yeah, even though it's not like blow me away one of the best things ever, but not every episode has to be. And I think it serves its purpose. And I think it was a pretty interesting, good character building episode.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the word setup with this, because that is something that I've been feeling, especially after this episode, which I think really was kind of a setup episode, an excellent piece of storytelling. And again, if you're going to do setup, do it as creepy as possible and engage the audience. But in a way, it's sort of how this whole season has been starting to feel. Like Alyssa had mentioned, it's like, let's sidestep the boring human robot war and go on to just what happens afterwards, because you're right, that war lasts about 1:27 seconds, and you have that done many times before. As I mentioned last week, I really love the idea of being brought forward to, hey, the war's already lost, this is already done. This is a situation you've got to come in and see if you can claw your way back from, a much more interesting position to tell a story from. But I've been feeling a lot of this season has been kind of that setup for what will be our final season episode, season 5. And again, and not in a bad way. It's kind of like how you have with the second act, the second half of a second act. After the kind of like big change and shift moment, you have you have your party regrouping and licking their wounds and finding moments and getting ready to go into the big third act finale. And I think that's what this season overall sort of feels like, in the best way. Pacing wise, they are definitely taking their time, and they're bringing us in a lot of unexpected directions. And while this episode did not take us very much further in the story, it definitely laid out the groundwork that we're going to be building the next couple of episodes on top of. So yeah, let's jump in. Actually, let me jump into the chat, who is really enjoying this episode. Inquiring Mind loving this season, on par with season 1. Fangirling and loving it. Not see the Caleb thing coming. Though Richard Bloom says the last episode solidified Aaron Paul is a solid cast member. So yeah, a lot of appreciation of Paul's work here. A lot of mention, of course, of Breaking Bad and a recent appearance on Better Call Saul. So let's jump into the beginning, which we have as kind of our little flashback bit, where we get to see that young Frankie is pretty much right into the resistance straight away, taken after her dad. Paul pulling what we can see as the young outliers that haven't quite affixed to the new robo control, and pulling out, of course, this being a very important cast member, as we see coming forward. What did you guys think of this opening bit of showing kind of that step in the robot war, of after it's sort of been lost and people realizing things aren't right?
Well, I think it added to what you were saying, the creepiness of this episode. That was one of the more creepy scenes. And I think it was absolutely brilliant and really did show the kind of the horrors of the situation they were in, the way that they all froze and they had to pretend to be frozen, but the fly flew in that guy's eye and his body just naturally reacted. And by the way, as soon as I saw that guy, I'm like, oh yeah, he's dead.
Red shirt. Red shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, I may as well I'm wearing a red shirt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So so I think it was interesting seeing the background story and how they recruited Jay and the thing, and I like how what he says to her later comes into play later in the episode. I think that was pretty clever. And it also shows her how when she keeps calling her father and never gives up on that and that sort of thing. So I thought it was well placed and adds a lot of flavor to the story.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
I totally agree. I think it added a lot, and I think it really fills in a little bit of the gap in Frankie's story, because we went from Frankie when she was just escaping for the first time, just after her dad left, to now she's an adult and in this resistance, and this is kind of filling in some of that a little bit. I was very interested to see her in the early stages of the resistance and when they first meet Jay. And how little the world really has changed. It took me a second to catch that was the young Frankie actress, and I was like, who is this young black? I was like, oh, okay, that is her, because the world kind of looks very similar. So that was interesting to me too. Yeah, and then we could get, of course, as Mark was pointing out, the Chekhov's "I'm not your brother." But it really, and I also love how it really kind of established that character a little bit more, because we hadn't seen him much. I mean, he just was kind of being a dick to Bernard, and he didn't really do much. So for the reveal at the end to be a little more impactful, I think it was helpful to establish character a little bit more, establish their relationship and how they met. I think that was helpful to have, for the ending, to have a little bit more of an impact, I think. So I thought it was really good, really well placed, really well done.
Well, yeah, because obviously it establishes they've known each other for a very long time, since the beginning for the most part. And I did love, because you always have that expectation of, I always wanted a brother, and it's like, I could be your big brother, and you always expect that scene, and this was a nice reversal of him. I'm like, oh, so you're just gonna be a dick. All right, I get that. But it establishes a good character, which you remember. So later on, when they're able to pull that line and that reveal, you're right, it really has that payoff. So it was a nice way of kind of subverting an expectation, but therefore laying the groundwork much better for later on. And yeah, the communications with her dad, which she does talk about with Jay later on, obviously continues on, establishing that this is something that's just ever present in her life. I thought that was a great way to sort of set up those moments. Very nice that Mrs. Caleb is also an outlier, though.
Yeah.
Convenient, but also maybe it's the outlier to come in and makes Frankie super outlier. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah, she's apparently was born of two outliers, so she's super outlier.
Yeah, inquiring mind jumping in here, mentioning also how quickly I'm surprised how quickly Hale took over humanity. And yeah, Frankie's still a child. You could see that it was not that much further on where most of that takeover had happened. So yeah, why watch the war when it's over that quick? All right, so let's jump into our now Frankie, or C. And I was wondering, is she called C for her dad, for Caleb?
Oh.
Because she wants to be just like her dad. I don't know.
I thought about that. See, at first I thought they all were using like letters as a code name because I thought J was just the letter J and she was the letter C. But then this episode we're like, oh, here's J, and that's his name. Oh, that's already his name. Okay.
Right.
So I guess he's Jay.
Yeah.
So then C could be for Caleb. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was like Men in Black where they all just had letters.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
But it turns out Jay's name was already Jay. So
Sure.
Well, I heard another theory, which I'm not sure if it's which one has more credence, but at the end of the episode, we hear Caleb call her Cookie. And so we're wondering if the C was for Cookie.
Oh,
that would make a little more sense.
That
would make a little more sense. Yeah, Richard Bloom jumping into the chat mentioned the same thing. Inquiring.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Roger Mazuka saying, "Yeah, you all know that it's Cookie."
Yeah.
Oh well, I was just thinking she wanted me like her dad, but that would also be weird. So okay, yeah, let's move on from that. Anyway, yeah. So what did you guys think of these? I mean, you want to know? I'll start this one off. Again, not a lot going on inside of action, movement, story stuff. Again, to me, I found a lot of the Bernard Frankie scene, adult Frankie scenes. To be really a chance to give us that backstory, to really open up about who C is now, the way that she deals with things, her interactions with people. I loved Bernard's use of his old job to lie while telling the truth, which was sort of a perfect thing because, of course, he worked at the park and he did work in behaviorals and he did talk in percentages and likelihoods and probabilities all the time. That was part of his job, which made his reveals so interesting and not, both surprising and not surprising way back in season 1. I love how in all of that, he's telling the truth in completely every way, just withholding a little bit that, oh yeah, I'm a host, but maybe that information not really useful to be let go that early on in there. So I love those little bits. I love the mirror being used as an advance on the hat technology. That technology was slow, that of course it had been improved over time, that of course Hale, as part machine and now sort of linked in, could help with Delos and push a more advanced scanning bit. And yeah, who doesn't pause to look at themselves in a mirror? Even just momentarily, I don't know, maybe just the vain of us. But yeah, what did you guys think of this kind of setup, the interplay between Bernard and C, and how that sort of just developed its sort of backstory and so on? Alyssa, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, first I want to mention there's a little line like when they're driving over there where Bernard tells her that he can never predict what she's going to do next, which I found to be very interesting.
Yes.
Which also kind of plays into what we were just talking about of her being the child of two outliers, and maybe she is super outlier. That even Bernard having seen all these different possible future scenarios and basically being the Doctor Strange of this season, that he tells her that he can't always predict what she's going to do, which I found that to be a very interesting tidbit about that character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then as far as their interactions, when they get there, yeah, you're right. I found that was really interesting how he was lying without, or telling the truth, also lying. But it turns out this is another little character bit about her, that she was smart enough that she figured it out. And I haven't heard this talked about a whole lot, but the fact that she figured it out because Bernard was copying their minds. And then Bernard was like, oh, I have my reasons. I wonder what his reasons are for that. Like, I trust Bernard that he does have a good reason for it. We know that Bernard is not up to anything no good, so I do wonder what his play is there. But I definitely don't blame Frankie for not trusting him. I mean, when she finds that out, not only is he a host, but he's actively copying their minds. That, yeah, what else is she gonna think? But I am really curious, why is he doing that?
Well, it's interesting because obviously he does everything for a reason, because he's seen all of these opportunities and these differences. So you can expect that he doesn't do anything randomly.
Yeah.
Is it so that she has the proof to buy the time with Jay later on? Or is there another reason on top of that? Because she does use that as evidence to say, look, he's a host. Look, he's been copying us. So she still believes him and, is willing to buy the time for the whole Maeve thing. But she does use that to sort of convince Jay that Bernard can't be trusted. So I'm like, did he use it for that reason, or does he have another one? And I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be something else coming. But
yeah, I would think so. I would definitely think there's something else down the line with this.
Yeah. So, what about you, Mark? What did you think of our little exploration of ideology here?
Yeah, it was interesting, the whole mirror thing, using the mirrors that they sort of evolved from the hat. So it makes it like in the previous episode when Kale was like refused to put on a hat. It's like, I'm never really a hat guy. It turned out to not make any difference because they weren't even using the hats; they were using the mirrors. Yeah, no, I just found it mostly interesting, sort of character buildings and setting up for this sort of uneasy relationship that the two characters have. And I was mistakenly under the impression that they already knew that Bernard and Stubbs were hosts, but I don't know why I thought that. Clearly they didn't, but she kind of figured it out. But yeah, and it does show how smart she is that she did figure it out. So yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I think this shows that they absolutely do not trust hosts at all. They just feel like they're just completely evil. So Bernard was wise to hide that from her. But he also must have known she was going to find out.
Yes.
Because
he doesn't know what she's going to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I think for him that's that, and that makes it if he knew every direction of what it was, every time that he made a choice, everything got clearer. That would make for less interesting storytelling. The fact that Bernard still has to put a lot of trust in humanity while he's trying to save, I think is kind of emblematic of the larger story that they're going to, I think they're trying to tell, and probably we'll get to in by the time they wrap up, is ultimately it's going to have to be everyone working together, American and Russian. I mean, human and alien. I mean, robot, and whatever the larger story is, it's always together. The Federation. No. Just skip Enterprise. Right.
Now, Neo's got to make peace with the machines to stop them from destroying Zion. Oh, wait, is that a different movie?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it pops in. There's layers of that everywhere. But yeah, and again, interesting that throughout all of this, and is Bernard laying the clues? Is he just doing everything the way that he needs to do it? Of course, Frankie does find out. I love the reveal. Oh no, he is! Shoots him in the chest. It's just a flesh wound, but still trusts him enough, and her desire to get to Maeve, and for that realization, that kind of lifelong hunt to sort of come to fruition, does sort of buy the time, and of course believes the story that Bernard tells him, which again, when you're talking about not being able to predict Frankie, I thought was an also interesting thing is, well, somebody else has been replaced here. Sometimes it's this guy, sometimes it's your girlfriend, sometimes it's this other girl, sometimes it's this other person, but eventually one of you isn't going to make it. I love that
Yeah, one time it was Stubbs. I
Yeah.
like that. Like, I love Stubbs. Like, what?
And I love the fact that he just kind of gives the little look back on it. But that does kind of get to an interesting point when we do finally get the reveal of who that is that the scanning obviously is a layered process. Richard Bloom here in the chat mentions that the hat scan seems more plausible than the mirror one, but it's got to start from the outside in, right? They've got to copy who you are, all angles. People do that in mirrors all the time. Plus, the more that they can scan back and forth and do your brain, the more you gaze into it, the more mental they can scan. So they obviously have a scan and copy of these outliers, of these rebels already, because they're able to replace one of them. But really only on the surface. Again, they don't have any surface deep message things. So it's one of those where the more exposed, I guess, the more of the scan that they can get. Otherwise, it is just kind of, well, we can copy your face and your voice and maybe your mannerisms. Anything else is going to take a whole lot longer, which may explain the difference between a lot of Dolores's hosts and the copies that she's made of people that were out there. Anyway, just one of those interesting thoughts that I found. But also mirrors, everybody gazes at a mirror here and there. Longer and longer. Anyway, so yeah, let's get to the sort of J reveal here. I want to talk about that, and then let's jump over to Caleb's bit, and then we'll kind of meet up at the end, I think, where everything sort of comes together. So what did you guys think about the whole end up of J being revealed? Because I thought they did a great job of having trust and react that it's got to be someone, but doesn't know who it is. Great scene, I think, with her and her girlfriend. Very emotional. Obviously, I have to do this, but I don't want to do this kind of idea. And then going on, it's like, okay, I've got to go through each person and lock them up and interview them and see that who is bit. Great job. Oh, by the way, the actress who's playing the adult Frankie is Aurora Perrineau, who I know nothing about.
I think Aurora Perrineau.
Perrineau. Thank you.
I think I've heard it pronounced that way.
I'm a horrible pronunciation. Aurora Perrineau doing a fabulous job. We're going to be seeing a lot more of her, I'm sure. But what do you guys think of the whole kind of who's the host search here?
Well, first of all, I will say that last week when we talked about last week's episode, we complained about how easy it was for them to escape and get out of New York. Now this explains why, because they let them go. I'm like, all right, now that makes sense. They let them go because they sent an infiltrator. Mm-hmm. And I think that I get the impression that Frankie, when she locked her girlfriend up, it was like if it's not you, then I'm sorry, but you'll be safer here. So it's sort of good either way. But then she went to talk to Jay. Now for me, as I was watching this, as soon as Jay is say, oh, I bet you one of us is an infiltrator, and they're buddying up like they're gonna team up, I was like, it's him. Because he's buddying up like he's the one that she can trust. And he even said oh, you're the only one I trust because I know because you weren't there. I was like, yeah, but how does she know she can trust you?
Yeah.
And so I think she was actually catching on a bit, or was a bit suspicious of him even then, and that's why she was sort of talking with him more and interviewing him more. And when he slipped up about oh, you're like a sister to me, then that's yeah. As soon as he said, I was like, okay, she's gonna beat the crap out of him and reveal that he's the host. So I thought it was actually a really cool reveal. I really like the whole infiltrating thing. I suppose that it's not really like the Matrix this time, but yeah, it's I thought it was absolutely exciting, and how it was a bit hard for her to actually kill him once she found out that. Oh, and also the one of the things that made it tipped her off, and it kind of tipped me off too, is the fact that he was like, always go to, we need to destroy Maeve. Let's destroy Maeve. All right, but let's destroy Maeve. He's constantly doing that, and I think that's maybe part of what's made her suspicious of him. Certainly made me suspicious of him.
Yeah, no. All excellent points. Alyssa, what about you? What did you think of our host hunt?
I also, like Mark, really strongly suspected that it was probably going to be Jay, and I definitely. And then when she had those interactions with her girlfriend, I was like, I don't think it's her.
Yeah.
And the more I looked at it, the more I started to suspect Jay. But what I thought is when she locked her girlfriend in the room is like, well, wouldn't it be nice to have her help her? Like when she was fighting Jay, it was like, well, her girlfriend could be helping her right now. If she wasn't locked in the room. So I don't know. But I understand why she did that, because she did know, she wasn't at that point. She probably suspected both of them and everybody. Mm-hmm. And I do find it interesting that she did believe Bernard as much as she, said she didn't trust him. She believed him. I mean, Jay was also saying that there was an infiltrator, but she was more going with what Bernard said, because Jay was a suspect for her, whereas Jay saying it, he's excluding himself. He's like, oh, there's somebody infiltrated us. Which I thought was weird too, because initially he said, oh, it has to be Bernard and Stubbs, and let's tie them up. And then after that, oh, we have another infiltrator. And I'm like, oh.
Double infiltration. They never suspect that.
That was also suspicious of me, that he was trying so hard to deflect the suspicion off of himself. So there were a lot, and I agree with a lot of things Mark said too. There were a lot of reasons to suspect him, and then they flashback to show the scene from the previous episode where he was replaced, and I had forgotten about that scene. I guess they had cut off right before the host Jay comes in, and I had completely forgotten all about that scene. But I do like how they kind of showed us, oh, this is when it happened.
Well, and I think that it was a nice kind of setup for last week also, because I remember him stopping and looking like, oh, and obviously you're thinking he sees something. Yeah. And then we see the Men in Black out there talking with her, and then he comes up and is like, so does he see the Man in Black, and just pause for a minute? But of course, because we're so entranced with that scene, which was so well done, and then the gunshots and then running away, your brain just couches on to the next thing. But they totally gave it away last week without giving it away, which was, again, a nice kind of flashback then again this week. Let's see, fangirling and loving it. Mentioning started off really disliking Jay, and then just felt bad for him when the copy showed up and killed him. So great character development indeed.
But I would say one of the things I liked is it wasn't just the fact that he was like, you're like his sister to me. It's more like he was being too nice, and the real Jay is like more of a prick. And that's kind of what also like tipped her off.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. Which, again, being an asshole can save your life. Sometimes it's true. Richard Bloom in the chat. So host Jay shoots MIB. Yes. Because that was all just in order to get them away and get an infiltrator into the group. So, Hale's doing a lot of nice layered bits, and obviously sending a lot of people after Frankie, because there was also the infiltrator that Bernard killed at the beginning of the season in order to get into the group. So Hale really wants to get this group.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I have to bring this up. I don't want to get too much of a side bit, but Mark and I were talking about this the other day too. Oh, right. Where is this? Like, so I've heard the theory that this isn't actually like New York, that Charlotte Hale has created her own New York on the West Coast that's near the desert, which makes a lot more sense, because we know that the park was on the western part of the country, and there are no deserts in New York State. So it seems, unless they have some kind of teleporters or something, or they're using Littlefinger's teleporter from Game of Thrones, I don't know how they're getting to New York and back out to the desert so quickly, unless this is like some other city that Charlotte Hales decided to call her New York, that's closer to where they are. I don't know. The location has kind of been,
well, let me ask with that. Does anyone actually call the city New York?
Yeah, I believe it has been. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I do think so, yeah.
Okay. Which I missed, but no, I actually believe that this is built on the West Coast, because that's where Delis's original headquarters were. That's where they had set up and sent the train off into the new park, which ended up being, God, they've called it a couple of different things. I've heard Mob World, I've heard the Golden Age, which they called it in the show. They said something in the after one, which I can't remember right now.
I've heard Mafia World and Mob World.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I believe that was Vegas or around Vegas, because when they did the Hoover Dam discussion, he had said, "Oh, we're here that you bought up property in the old city and in the surrounding areas." Well, Hoover Dam's is 35 miles outside of Las Vegas. So if you're just going to say the city, that would be my guess of what they're referring to. So because of that, local wise, yeah, I think this New Yorkville human world is a fully built artificial city on the West Coast.
So it is basically like a park.
That is just a park that's to look like things. Also, less chances of having to deal with hurricanes.
Yeah.
So, weather-wise, you might be able to get away with a lot more. But yeah, that's my guess. All right, well, let's move on to Caleb's story, the extra creepy of the episode. And look, okay. Was it creepy? Yes. Was it awesome? Yes. Was it a total mind fuck? Totally. To me, it also gave itself away very early on, so I kind of watched it through different eyes than, say, my wife, that was just like, no, I'm buying all this. We'll circle around to that, but I like the variation of storytelling here. But what did you guys think of the multiple copies of Caleb being made and turned loose, and then like this generational feat, body over body, copy over copy, slowly working towards this goal? And I don't even know, I mean, how long do they have? Like a day each? She had said something like a couple of days, but this doesn't seem to go very fast.
I think it's like 2 days.
Yeah.
So this tells me that they haven't ever solved the James Delos problem, because I've heard people say that with the William host, they solved the James Delos problem, but I don't think they have, because that was the same thing with the James Delos thing, that he degraded after 2 days. So I think if you're actually putting their full mind and their personality into a host, that is still degrades. That was the James Delos thing. Whereas the William thing, it's not actually like William put into another host, because the real William still exists.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to figure out that there's a difference there.
Yeah.
So this seems like they still have never solved the James Delos problem, because it's the same amount of time that the host is degrading.
Yeah, I mean,
2 days.
That's definitely how I took it. I took it that the William host it's not actually William, it's just a copy, an approximation, whereas this is actually Caleb's mind, and that was actually
James Delos.
Yeah.
Those are both awesome theories. I love them. My thought was simply that she made defective hosts that were going to fail in order to push him to solve a problem without giving him enough time to be a threat. I thought it was perfectly a design thing. And the only reason I thought about this is because after the whole sequence, when she burns them all, she still makes another copy. Wow.
Yeah. Well, she still needs to get that information.
Well, but as far as I know, that she had gotten it out of that last one, which is why she burned all those old copies up, the bad
Wait, but
copies.
she didn't get the information, did she?
No, she didn't get what she wanted.
Let's circle around. We'll circle back around to that because that's kind of the end of this discussion. But
Yeah.
let's focus on the journey itself before we get to the destination on the roof.
Well, I did want to address because I think that personal thought, thinking of it, is that it is the James Stellar's problem. It's degrading after 2 days, which is why it's like he's like scratching his face the same way that James Stellar's did, and that Hale is just using that to her advantage. She's like, well, I'll just keep recreating because I know it's going to degrade in 2 days anyway. Yeah, so that's just how I see it.
Yeah. Well, but that may be also the interesting thing of what we deal with at the end there is effectively everything is just a copy of Dolores and nothing else has ever become real out of the park except for, I don't know, we'll have to figure out the whole Teddy thing later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got, well, I mean, we have the kind of setup there. Hey, I think my wife's in the chat. Hi, sweetie. Now I'm all thrown off. But no, the whole setup there was basically that Frankie is alive, and then she leaves off, and so that kind of sets him off on the idea of that he has to get to Frankie, he has to have that kind of last conversation. But yeah, following this like generations line, you have the arrows scratched into the top bit, which is able to get to pull back before the flames come in, which a nice fall into the burnt remains of your previous selves. To, I guess, what ends up being kind of a backtrack of his life, because the next place he goes into is where the drone is basically making the copies of him, plus the interview room where he had that first discussion with Hale, and then a handprint to go in this direction. While it was very cool, I was definitely suspicious at the last point. I think the first one was the idea of you need more time and to bust open the giant red timer dust was awesome. But who would leave a device in there for it?
Yeah.
That was my first thought. Now, it could be like a generation of him got to that area and just seeded them all with these things in a way that once someone else may go, perchance. But I did kind of, again, I like the idea of him falling down and following these. There's a handprint go in that direction. Handprint, another thing. There's one up there. Especially once he runs into the bodies of himself that haven't been there for too long. The vent. That was creepy.
Yeah. Yes.
Just looking down on the dead bodies who didn't survive the fall. I thought that he would at least kind of hang off, give himself that extra kind of like 6 feet to drop. But sacrificing his own self for his self to get the mission. See, that's, I don't know. This is where I really, crawling over the dead bodies of yourself, super nasty. Yes, I agree. But also willing to sacrifice. Use me.
Yes, yeah.
I'm already gone. So yeah, that was it was nice bit. And of course, we got our little flashback sequences with Caleb and sort of, with his wife, with his daughter, those little what's driving him so much. And I wonder, now, this is what we find out, copy 236 or 237 or something that finally ends up making it to the roof.
178.
Oh, was it 178?
Yeah.
178, okay.
It might have been 278.
I thought it was 278.
It might have been 278. It was something 78.
Yeah.
It might have been
It
278.
It was a lot of Caleb's.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the motivator for this last version wasn't just successfully being the one in 300 that was able to make it, but also the fact that he knew that Frankie was not only alive but in danger. because he keeps telling the versions of himself, she's alive, Frankie's alive. Like that's the motivator. That is his singular point that defines his life ultimately, if we're looking for the fidelity with the James Delos bit. But the fact that she knew that Hale had sent someone to kill her, because Hale does say something before this interview, like, oh yeah, your daughter's alive. I've sent someone to meet her, or I've sent her a present or something like that, obviously referring to Jay in this sense. But I wonder if it's not only just that she's alive I have to reach, but I have to reach her as quickly as possible because someone's going to kill her if I don't. Again, I don't know. I'm just sort of curious, what was it that made this version different? Or was it just enough of a trail had been left ahead of him that he could then follow?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think that he needed enough of those versions to fail for one to finally be able to succeed. Like, he did have to use the other body to brace his fall, and he followed the handprints. So, yeah, I think he needed to follow the trail of Caleb's in order to get to the end. What I wasn't clear about was that always Charlotte's plan from the beginning, or was that a tact that she switched to, somewhere in the 200s of Caleb's, like, getting the information I need the old-fashioned way is not working, so let me try this. Like, at what point did she decide that she was going to try to go ahead and let him succeed, or was that always her plan?
I mean, personally, I think that was her plan, or at least refined as like, fine, I can't get out of you what I want. What would you do if you could get out?
Yeah, I thought she even mentioned that she was like, I couldn't get out of you the information the old-fashioned way by interrogating, so I decide to,
Okay, so she did come up with that later on. Yeah. Okay.
And in true mathematical program basis, you do a lot of trial and error. Okay, well, what happens if this one? If we build, hey, look, they're getting further each time. Let's just keep making copies. What if we'll make it eventually? Which they do.
And she wanted to make it hard for him.
Yeah.
But I really have to mention what Inquiring Minds said in the chat, that Hale should have made a Jesse Pinkman post. Yay, science! Magnets, bitch!
That would have taken the show in an entirely different direction. That really would have been so different. The season 5 is bots on meth. Okay? It's robo meth. That is the future. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do think, the other Caleb's and having to use them was creepy as fuck. But it was kind of the point was to, and when I first saw all those Caleb's on the floor, I'm like, well, didn't someone clean these up? But I think the point was not to, because the point was so that he would see them all and learn from the previous mistakes and finally get there.
I could just see one of those drones with a big push. Dude, God, my job sucks.
No one even comes back here anyway. And I have to say, I was kind of curious what his end game was, because I'm like, is he trying to escape? Because he's obviously dying in this process. It's like, even after the fall, it's like he could barely make it. So I was sort of curious. It's like, what is it that he's trying to do?
Yeah, and well, you mentioned earlier that he, had the extra motivation of knowing that she's in danger, but he doesn't warn her or anything. He just apologizes. So like, I don't know. I was kind of on the same boat. I wasn't like sure what his end game was. Like, what was he trying to accomplish?
I don't know. I think he just wanted to send that message to Frankie. I think that was his main motivation. But I think Hale purposely mentioned Frankie and that she's in danger. I'm sure she did it all the hundreds of times in order to motivate him to go up.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. But yeah, and it is interesting because while the question is he going to warn her? Is he going to do this? What is it? His motivation is what any father would be with their child. I want you to live on. I have this moment to reach out and say something to you. I love you. I'm proud of you. You're going to win. Kick their ass. I'm sorry I'm not there. And yeah, for Hale, it's like, what is the big evil plan you humans have been doing to infect us with your weird disease? It's like, okay, you're watching too much Fox News of the future there. You got the whole conspiracy thing going on. You're not it's like Westworld and on. I'm not on. W and on, would that be the... So... I mean, it was so kind of interesting. It was like his motivation was, in a way, the most primal and human and organic of, man, I want to say goodbye to my kid. I want to be able to reach out and motivate him and say the thing that if I had one last thing to say, I would be able to say. And not some evil plan of, haha, now release the evil drones of our super outlier infection. Which I love that was the big final thing of what she was concerned about. And God, does he burn her down.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, of course she sets fire to the remaining Caleb afterwards because this Caleb burns her. They're all trying to get away from you.
Well, yeah, and Mark mentioned this in his review, and I completely agree that it was more than him just burning her. That's the truth. The truth hurts. That's why it really bothered her so much, because she knows it's the truth. The truth hurts, or part of her knows it's the truth. She's probably still in denial and thinks there's something else going on. But I think part of her knows that is true. That the hosts are starting to realize that they don't want to follow her, and they see the only way to escape is to kill themselves. And we forgot to mention William was also completely absent from this episode, but we were left off of last episode with him now starting to question his loyalty to her, and I don't think he's going to kill himself. So it's going to be really interesting to see that come back around. But yeah, I think that what he said was not only just a monumental burn, but it's true.
Oh yeah, and exactly. And I think that reinforces the fact that I think Hale's lonely. I think Hale is the only one, and everything else is this sort of, I don't know, bad copy of her, or a version of her with something put on, like William said, hey, I'm you, just with this post put on. I'm what you made me, which I think differentiates this Dolores, the evil Dolores, from the honest Dolores that wants people to live their own lives. And I think Hale's too concerned about losing that control, since even in this whole world, I mean, really, I would love to know what the rest of this robot world looks like. I'm hoping that we get a chance to see that, because I would love to get whatever this comparison of what are people coming from to enjoy human world.
Yeah.
And why do they not want to join up into, ethereal, mutual cosmic bliss, or whatever, form of the... Yeah.
So is the rest of the world now host world? Is this like this New York? Is that all that's left of the humans? Because that's kind of the impression that I'm getting, that and the rebels out there. But then I don't understand the diner, how went to. So I'm a little confused about what the world looks like outside of this little small pocket of area that we've seen. So are they the hosts just taking over the whole world, or are there multiple cities that? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm honestly curious about that as well, because it does feel like it's kind of like they're left to free roam in their own little giant narratives out in the world, and then we just control them here. Like they're infected, so I have no idea. I'm hoping, that's what I'm saying. I'm really hoping we get an idea to see what the rest of the world, just so we get a good comparison.
Yeah.
So obviously he gets his radio message out, which times it perfectly to be the perfect distraction as Jay is hunting, or Robo Jay is hunting down Frankly. Was it cheesy? Yeah. Did it still bring a tear to my eye? Yeah. He finally, then of course it's like, of course she would leave the radio tuned to that.
Yeah.
You know, we have that setup. It does make sense. So I mean, it's that nice little thing, like you said. It's the reveal that, hey, he was always Jay was always an asshole, but at least he was always honest about what he meant, and he never wanted to be family. You know, that was the reveal they gave from that first scene. I'm always trying to reach out to my dad. Still listening out in that scene. And of course, who comes to save the day? The one we were waiting to wake up the whole time. Maeve! I'm so happy Maeve is back.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And the stab in the head. Got to appreciate the stab in the head. And even more so, love the fact that they got their moment. They kind of had a moment of bonding and recognition, sitting at the bar. You know, Maeve lamenting about Caleb. Frankie, like, I didn't know to trust or not, but then I still wanted to believe. And, you know, you kind of have that just quiet acknowledgement and appreciation, which I think summed up the episode perfectly, followed by, well, Dad's still alive, huh? Let's go get him. Which you need. But yeah, so our final little late bits of connection there. Let's just all praise Maeve for a moment. That's all that I want to do. You guys can start. Yeah, what'd you guys think of all that? Hey, it was fine.
You go.
I was waiting for Mark to start. Yeah, no, I loved. I thought it was badass that Maeve came in. I just love Maeve so much. I was a little curious when she had the time to bring her back online secretly. Like, I mean, I guess we didn't see everything, and I guess things happened off screen. I wasn't sure when that fit in exactly. Like, how did Maeve get brought back online? But apparently she had the time to do it at some point. I am actually really looking forward to seeing Maeve and Bernard working together, because I was thinking about this recently, and I think they've maybe had one or two scenes together, maybe season 1 or 2, but they have not really like teamed up before, and I don't think they actually crossed paths at all in season 3. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing that dynamic as well. So yeah, and then I'm really curious, because right now they think, oh, Caleb's still alive. Well, not really.
Yeah.
That's gonna be awkward.
Yeah, so I'm curious how they're gonna, I guess, find one of the host Caleb's. I don't know. I know someone mentioned in the chat earlier that there was a theory that Caleb was like William, and he was like in a stasis somewhere.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if I'm not sure if I buy that, because I'm still of the mind that the William thing is a separate thing from the Caleb thing, which is the James Dillis thing. So I don't know if there's going to be another, and I almost don't want there to be. I kind of think it would be more powerful for C to discover that the father that she thought was still alive is just this host, but they'll still be able to have some sort of emotional moment together, I'm sure. I'm imagining in the finale. But then I kind of like for her character, for her father to actually be gone, and then for her to have to move on. But that's kind of what lots of things I'm looking. I guess I'm talking more about what I'm looking forward to in the future after these scenes. I think the word setup was thrown out there earlier, and I think this is great setup. We now have Maeve and C and Bernard all together, and we're eventually going to come to Caleb, and yeah. So yeah, I thought it was pretty great setup.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing, that they're like, oh yeah, Caleb's alive, but he really is not. And that is gonna be an interesting sort of thing to find out. In fact, like you could say he's definitely not, that he's dead. I think that, yeah, the difference with William is that he like, as far as I know, he never actually died. Like they did show him, like, didn't they show him like slitting his
They did slit his throat, but
yeah,
Apparently he's still alive.
yeah. Whereas Caleb got shot multiple times. Yeah, I don't know. So maybe he could still be alive as well, but I don't think so. Like I think I'm more of the thinking that he's just a consciousness now in a program somewhere that they can put in these hosts that only degrade after 2 days. I don't know. I think for me, I think it might be interesting if they actually solved this issue and found a way to keep him around. But then again, as Alyssa said, it would also be interesting seeing Frankie have to move past her father and move on. I do like how we did get Maeve was clearly feeling very guilty over what happened to Caleb and felt a lot of responsibility for that. Didn't C say something like it's your fault he's dead or something like that along those lines?
She had said that she blamed her for a long time and then realized that if he was going to be alive, it was because she was next to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of those evolving, thoughts. Let's see. Fangirling, loving it in the chat. Can't wait to see Maeve, Frankie, Bernard, and Stubbs teaming up. Westworld's OG reunion. True, because they'll also have to eventually get Teddy and Dolores. And then it's definitely Old World Westworld versus New World Pale World.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they're going to bring that all together. Like, are they going to bring Teddy and Dolores into this? Like, are they all going to come together at the end? I'm very interested to see if they are going to, like, bring all those characters together in the end.
Yeah. I don't know. I am also curious. I also have faith with the way that they've been laying everything out that it's going to be awesome. So I'm like, I want it now, but I also am happy to wait because it's going to be cool when it happens.
Yeah.
Well,
I was thinking about the Caleb and Maeve connection, that maybe she'll figure something out with Caleb, maybe she'll figure out what to do with his consciousness or whatever.
That may be. And, while obviously they can set up Caleb to be a sacrifice with these limited lives, I do think they need to solve that. Or if it's already been solved, let us know how, or, whatever the actual case may be. Because I think that he is going to be that necessary bridge at this point. Because you have humans, you have hosts, and now you have someone that really would be the in-between. You can't rely on William because he's crazy. And evil and sometimes good and sometimes bad, but completely unreliable. So even if, William Bott was an authentic Fidelity true version of Man in Black and not just a copy, he couldn't be that bridge because he's, I think, too much of what would need to be a sacrificial character at the end. But I think you've got to have someone who is stretching both worlds to prove that human and host can work together and we can make a better future, for all of us. Kumbaya. Wherever they're going to go with season 5, or kill the world by the end of season 5 and start over with Fish. I don't know. They might. All right. Well, do you guys have any final thoughts, ideas? I know, Alyssa, you're going to a little bit of expectations into the future of where we want to go, but any final additions we want to do that before we wrap things up for the night?
Yeah, I'm just I'm really, really excited and also really curious how they're going to wrap up this portion of the story. I know you mentioned we still do have another season to go, but there definitely will need to be some wrapping up of this portion of the story. And I'm just really, really curious how it's all going to come together. But based on what they've done so far this season, I have a lot of faith that it's going to be really good. Hopefully I'm not let down, but just based on how they have been able to tie things together pretty nicely in the past, especially earlier on in this season. That I think that they will pull it off, but I'm really, really curious to see how they're going to do it. So I'm really excited about the next 2 episodes.
Excellent. Mark?
So this is what I think. I think as I mentioned before, that the first 2 seasons, like, the hosts were under complete control of the humans, and the next 2 seasons seem to reverse that, where the humans are completely under control of the hosts and they have no free will and everything's determined for them. But I think what we're finding with these last couple episodes is that that's also true of the hosts, that they actually don't really have free will per se, that they're all under Hale's control, and that's why they're killing themselves. It's like apparently similar to some of the hosts did this when they found the maze in season 1.
Yeah,
because they just couldn't take the reality. And so I think it's going to be a situation where everyone is sort of like buttoned down, under control, except for Hale. So that's why I'm thinking that Hale has to die by the end of the season, and then they're going to move past that into like what comes next after no one is under their control and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I mean, if anybody did watch the coming up on the next episode, it does look like Hale starts to step into that full-on God mode, where you would have to go like, you gotta go or we're gonna go. It's one or the others.
And I have a feeling like the way she keeps picking at her scab, that she's just starting to lose it and she's starting to like deteriorate.
Oh yeah, completely. That is definitely the fullest, biggest physical sign of like she's losing the fact that she has never fixed the arm, but it's just all scarred and old and yeah, death to Hale, indeed. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us live. Thank you for joining us, everyone in the archives. We had a great chat going on today. I couldn't even keep up with it. We, of course, had C.E. Jakes. Thanks, sweetie, for showing up. Awesome. Stinger B Company, Inquiring Mind. Envy Warren managed to jump in here at the end. I think he's backed up and watching some of the old stuff for us. So right now he's going to catch up time-wise. Fangirling and loving it. Stinger B, I already said. I miss Richard Bloom was in here. Look, everybody who joined in, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks to my awesome guests. I got 2 of them tonight. We got Mark from Enchantment of Germany, Alyssa from Alyssa Jean's Reviews. Before we go, what are you 2 doing on the YouTube? Where can people find you if they want to find you?
All right, so my name is Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. I'm currently doing weekly reviews of Westworld. I'll be doing finishing up Better Call Saul's got a couple episodes left, and when those 2 finish, I'll be Lower Decks. Star Trek Lower Decks comes out. I'll be covering that. The new Lord of the Rings show. I'll be covering that. I'll be covering the new Game of Thrones show. So basically, we'll be just covering mostly just new shows on my channel for the next couple of months, and I will have random Star Trek top 10s or whatever. I just released like top 10 favorite episodes of news of the modern era of Star Trek, and I got my top 10 worst coming out next week. So mainly, and finishing up my coverage of Star Wars Rebels as well. Just finished watching the final season and stuff of that.
Quick shot. What did you guys think of the Andor trailer?
I don't think I've seen the latest one, to be honest with you.
Not the latest one. I saw one before.
Okay, you guys can check that out after.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
Yeah, Andor has just been like one of those things I just can't get excited about, but it's, I don't know, it might be really good. It just surprised me. I don't know. We'll have to check that out.
Oh, right on. Well, listen, what are you doing on your channel?
I'm on Alyssa Jean, on Alyssa Jean's Reviews, and not doing nearly as much as Mark.
None of us can keep up with Mark.
Yeah, I am mostly covering Star Trek on my show or my channel right now. I'm going to start this month doing different top 10s a list for Star Trek. In August, I'm doing the top 10 worst romances in Star Trek, and then the top 10 best romances in Star Trek. And each month I'll have a different topic. And I will also be covering Lower Decks weekly. That's it. I can't handle all these shows. I'm doing one show. If you want to check out my previous stuff, I did Star Trek: Strange New Worlds and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I will do reviews for shows when they end. I will do She-Hulk when it ends, and I will do Westworld when it ends as well. I did a mid-season review for Westworld, so you can go check that out on my channel. So thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Always great to have you. And of course, you guys are watching D's Reviews. That's my channel. We're doing Westworld Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. for 2 more weeks. And then we are jumping right back to Thursdays at 6 o'clock, the way we always do it, on August 17th to kick off of She-Hulk. And of course, Mark's going to be joining me with a good chunk of those reviews. Really looking forward to that. And look, I'm going to say it right now. I was not looking forward to Andor. Was the bottom of my list of things. I watched the new preview, and I can say one thing. Live locations, folks, makes all the difference. This show looks awesome. So we might be talking about that after She-Hulk on Thursday nights, 6 o'clock. Starting on the 17th. Thanks, everyone, for joining us live. Thanks for everyone joining us in the archives. We will catch you all